thank you all very much for coming. This is our 30-minute webinar today of everything you need to know about spam and spam filters. My name is Darren Hepburn. I'm the Operations Director here at NewZapp Communications. And like I say, today we're going to be looking at a few bits and pieces that you need to know for getting past the arch enemy of email communications, the Darth Vader that we all have to contend with, and that's the spam filter. Please feel free to ask questions as we're going along. I'll try to answer them as I see them, but if I don't, I'll circle back to them and answer them when we get to the end of the webinar. Now, we did a poll recently of about 850 or so communicators, and 53% of them still said that email was the primary channel for their email comms strategy. Just proving, as always, that certainly for me, that email isn't dead. Even though I've been told on many occasions over the years that my services and my platform is going to be replaced by Twitter and other social media mechanisms for delivering communications, but email is still the number one. But it still has its number one arch enemy, which is the spam filter. And so today, hopefully, I'm going to show you a few bits that are going to get you beyond that filtering and have you a little bit more of an understanding on what we mean by spam filters and the journey that your email takes. So today we're going to be looking at some barriers and checkpoints that your email has to navigate. We're going to look at some of the basic filtering that goes on with an email campaign. We're going to look at some email delivery must-haves, the things that are gold standard that you have to have on any email campaign. And we're going to look at some new areas, which include intelligent inboxes and email bots. And these are the new kids on the block that could be having an effect on your email campaigns. But first of all, we are going to start with a little history lesson. And so why do we call it spam? You have to be of a certain age to know the answer to this one. Someone like myself, it's actually based on a Monty Python sketch back in the 70s, where there was an old style cafe where there was a lot of what's called spam on the menu, spam egg and chips, spam and beans, spam, and there was just everything had spam in it. Spam is a luncheon meat. Someone who used to get fed this as children by my parents, and it's basically spiced ham. And so it's SB of spiced, AM of ham, spam. And that's how we end up with this tinned luncheon meat. How did it get signed up to be the universal word for irrelevant and unwanted messages? Back in the day when this sketch was being done, there would be computer message boards popping up as early pre-adopters to the internet. And on these notice boards, rival companies would know if they just wrote Monty Python quotes on your notice board, it drove your messages down out of screen. And over time, they got just a bit lazy, and so they just wrote spam, 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 just like the sketch on the menu board of the Monty Python episode. And so the word spam then became synonymous with unwanted or irrelevant messages. It's as simple as that. It was an old Monty Python sketch. The first ever spam email was sent on the 3rd of May, 1978, and it was sent by this gentleman here, a chap called Gary Thruick, globally known as the godfather of spam, although he will always testify he's the godfather of email communications. He sent through a message, an email, if you will, to a system called the ARPANET, which was one of the very early predecessors to the internet. It was a Pentagon-based communications network in North America, and he was very privileged to have access to it. But he sent a message to about 400 of his customers promoting a product. He got a severe reprimand for it. It was never been done before, and the network administrators were not impressed that he was doing such an item, and so he got told off for that. He was simply not supposed to be doing this sort of thing. We can take a quick look at his email. This was it in all of its glory. All text-based, that's all you could do in them days. No pictures or images. and he was promoting his new product, the Deck System 20, a very portable computer, as you can see, very conveniently room-sized. Probably with the same amount of processing power as my Fitbit has today. Now, he will testify to this day that this wasn't a spam communication, and there's a lot of evidence to prove that he's actually correct in this area. So a modern spam filter, for example, would have no problem with Gary's communication here. It would let it straight into the inbox. There's no images, there's no text, there's no hyperlinks. It's well written in pure text. Its only crime is that it's all in uppercase. But apart from that, it will go through. Gary also testifies that he made $14 million off the back of this communication. So it worked. Whether it be spam or not, he had a massive amount of success off the back of this email. The other fact about Gary nowadays is that only very, very, very close friends and family have Gary's email address for obvious reasons, because otherwise he would get a lot of emails all about spam. So now we know where it came from, and now we know what where the word and how it was born back there in the 70s. Let's take a look at modern day email communications, and let's have a look at the barriers and checkpoints that your email has to go through. Once we've written our email and we're really happy with it, and we click send, it's just the start of the journey for your email. It's got a lot of hoops and hurdles to get over, from corporate restrictions set at the server level right down to individual user settings that it has to contend with. One of the new sort of barriers and objections it has to overcome is quite a new thing with external mail. Now, you might have seen this in your own inboxes, where at the top of the email you get this little warning on your emails, where it's basically telling you not to click on any of the links that are inside the email itself, because it's from an external source. This was brought along with malware and viruses that were arriving in organizations, because people were clicking on emails thinking it's a safe email because it's come from the same domain that they're on, and it's not the case. The NHS were victim of the WannaCry virus, for example, a few years ago, based on an external email that was masquerading as an internal one, and so it was clicked on and prevented any sort of communication through the NHS for a couple of days, which is really damaging. The other filters that we have to start with are the global ones and individual ones. So we can take a look at the journey that your email has to take. It starts its life on your computer, and so you've created it, written it, lovingly played around with it, and you're all really happy for it to go. You click onto the email itself, and so click send on the email itself, and it goes to your mail server. You're either sending this mail internally through your own Office or Outlook, or you're sending it via a supplier, someone like ourselves, NewZapp or MailChimp, Top Digital, Constant Contact, Sendinblue, anyone like that is your sending mail server. That then heads off into the internet, and then the journey really begins through filtering. It arrives at your message recipient's sort of firewalls. It gets through there. It gets to go into the contact mail server of your recipient. If that's happy, it then gets to go through to your contact's computers. And then the final hurdle it has to jump is whether or not it arrives in the inbox, or whether or not it arrives on the individual settings. So there are two primary areas to look at here with regards to the journey of the email. The first one is at the contact mail server. This is looking at your email campaign to see if it's coming from an area that's blacklisted, if it's coming from a campaign source which has high bounce rates, if the email itself has embedded images, that sort of thing. This area is where the journey ends for that email if it's got any of those problems in that respect. Then at a user level, we have filters such as user rules. So they are setting up something to say if a subject line contains X, move to Y. If this person isn't on a safe senders list, and more prevalent in today's marketing is intelligent inboxes, which we'll take a look at in more detail later on. So we'll take a look at now at what sort of spam filters your email has to adhere to. And there are 6 primary ones. There is content filters, header filters, blacklist filters, language filters, rule-based filters, and Bayesian filters. Sounds a lot, but this is everything that your email does have to contend with. Content filters are based on what's actually in the body of the email, what is in your words, your text, your pictures, your imagery. The header filters is looking at the header information on your email. So next time you go into your Outlook, open up an email and go to the properties, you'll be able to see the header information of that email. So everything in there needs to be correct. Blacklist filters, as I aforementioned on the mail servers. Does your email, or is your email coming from an IP address that is currently blacklisted? You can have language filters. So an organization might have a setting where it says no email is to arrive that's written in a certain language, because we're based in country X, so we don't want to receive emails in a language from country Y. Rule-based filters, filters based on recipients from addresses, that sort of thing. And then the Bayesian filters is the intelligent filtering. So it starts to look at, well, you've moved emails from this person in the past to spam, so I will do the same with this email now on an intelligence-based level. So how can we check all of these filters all in one go? There's a fantastic free tool here called mail-tester.com, and you can send a copy of your very latest email to this platform, and it will check all of those filters for you in a very handy, convenient screen. Current NewZapp users, you don't have to go here because you've got this built inside your editor for you, so you can just click on the spam checker and it will do this test. It will take a look at your email, have a look at all those sort of filters, and then it will come back with a score, and it will say your email scores X out of 10. Anything over 7 stands a really good chance of arriving. Anything under 5, you need to go back and have a look at and see if you can improve on that. And this system will give you the reasons why your email is failing or succeeding. You don't have any broken links. Excellent. Your mail server isn't on any blacklists. Your message is well formatted and contains all the right sort of code. You're properly authenticated. This one here is really important. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. And Spam Assassin here is a checking on your words and your content, and it tells you where you can improve. So all the information that you need to jump through all of those 6 filters will be in this piece of kit, mailtester.com. It's a really nice little free feature. Content-based spam filters, they're looking at the actual words and pictures that you're using inside your emails. And I'm just going to show you a quick 100+ spam words, that some of them that are ragingly obvious, like Viagra and Rolex and investment. The poor people at Rolex obviously cannot send any email campaigns. It's one of the #1 spam words, so they have to use other sort of marketing channels. But there are a few here that you might use on a day-to-day basis and not even know you're doing it. Like click here, get started now, bonus, free quote, great offer, buy, call. All of these words start to add up on your campaigns and start to create a bad spam score. Content filters work like a bank manager does when you go for a loan. So he'll take a look at you and say, okay, Mr. Hepburn, do you bank with us? Yes, that's 1 point. Do you have a credit card with us? Yes, 2 points. Do you have a mortgage with us? Yes, 3 points. Get to 5 points. Congratulations, Mr. Hepburn. Here's a bank loan that you can waste on very expensive and unnecessary Star Wars Lego. A message filter is exactly the same when it comes to content. It sees, well, you've used the word click here, that's half a point. You've used the word bargain, that's another half a point. You've used the word Viagra, well, that's 5 points. Get to a certain number, your email is going to get blocked. So it's in a combination. It's the accumulation of using these sort of words in your email, which will eventually see you put into spam. A lot of them very, very harmless, that you think to yourself, oh, I use that word a lot. but the accumulation of using it over a period of time will end up with that email becoming a problem for a message filter. Now, that said, you are attending this webinar based on an email that we had to use the word spam in. And even though the word spam is clearly one of those bad ones, it's down here. You can't miss it in the bad words. So how do we do that? How do we get clever enough to enable us to use that word spam without falling foul of a content filter? We do things like making sure that we don't use it too often. So if we use it in the subject line, we don't use it in the body of the email. And we also do another little clever trick, is if we want to use one of these words, we put them on images. So we have a picture of the word spam, which a message filter can't read. It can only read text. It can't read pictures. They're not intelligent enough to look at the pictures and look at the text on there. So if you go back to these emails that we've sent you in the past, you'll see that our header image is a big one that has the word spam written on that, but we get away with it because it's a picture of the word spam and not an actual word spam itself in text. You may notice that there's a column missing from here, which is swearing and porn phrases. You know, this is not the time to list all of the swear words that are in the English language. Just like our parents told us, swearing isn't big and it isn't clever. But we might use them in our day-to-day language completely by accident. And this is where we're sending spam without even knowing it. I'll leave this screen here for you to draw your own conclusions as to why this email in particular arrived in my spam folder. Very, very harmless, very, very accidental, but I'm afraid in modern day marketing and modern day communications, you simply can't use a subject line like that, which can be misconstrued to mean something completely different. A content filter doesn't do irony and it doesn't do context. It just looks at the word and says, well, that word is used in other types of emails. And as a consequence, I'm afraid, you're going in the spam folder. So just be careful when you're using certain words and certain phraseologies in your content, and especially in your subject lines. So just to make sure they can't be misconstrued to mean something completely different. So there's a little bit about the filters that we have to get through, and in particular the content filters, which are very important. But now we're going to look at some of the technical side of your email deliverability. We have some gold standard stuff that you have to have in email comms, particularly if you're using a provider, a MailChimp, a NewZapp, Sendinblue, all the ones I've listed previously. You have to have things like an SPF, which is a sender policy framework, little bit of code. You have to have nowadays a DKIM, which is a domain key identified mail. This is sort of a real joining of your domain and the mail server that you're using. These are looked at in particular by message and mail filters and mail servers. You have to have a real reply address, even though that inbox is going to get bombarded with out of offices and unnecessary replies. It has to be legitimate. There has to be something that a message server can check to make sure that the respondent is correct. It has to be nice and clean code, all of the latest sort of code. Try and avoid cutting and pasting Microsoft Word tables into an email. It's using old and incompatible code. Message filter will not like that. And all of your links are working. This is really important, and we'll take a look at that later with email bots, that the links on your campaigns are working and in a tidy fashion. So why does that make a big difference? Or what does the SPF and the DKIM sort of thing mean? If we look back on this previous slide, we can see that we have some new arrows going on. So once we've sent our email from our provider, from our NewZapp or our MailChimp, it goes on the same journey as it did before, but this time the contact mail server asks the question. It says, is there an SPF or is there a DKIM? So it fires the question back to the mail server. If it gets a no, that is the end of the journey. The email will not go through to the contact computers, and so it won't even get through to individual settings. It's only if there's a yes to an SPF and a yes to a DKIM that it will allow that email through. This has been coming on board more and more and more. So some of you might be sitting there saying, well, actually, I don't have that, but I'm still getting emails through. Eventually, that will stop. As mail servers get more and more tighter and more specific about the gold standard of information that they need to see on your emails before it can go through to your end recipient. So it's really important that you have those two things installed and in place and in play. A little additional extra touch to that is to have your own IP address. If you can speak to your supplier and get yourself your own IP, so no other person's email comes from that IP address except yours, which is another extra layer of deliverability assurance. I always think of an SPF and a DKIM much the same way as when you go to an airport to get on a plane. You would not go to an airport without your passport or a boarding pass because they wouldn't let you on. You could turn up to the gate and say, I'd like to get on that airplane over there, please. And they go, have you got a passport? No. Okay, have you got a boarding card? No. Well, then you're not getting on the plane. It's that simple. And we're getting to the stage now where a mail server will not let you through without the SPF and DKIM, which is your boarding card and your passport. They are that important to your delivery. So we've managed to get our email through the mail server, and it's arrived at our contacts inbox. And so now we have to compete with some new modern technology, which is intelligent inboxing, intelligent learning, and email bots. So what are they? These are new things that have come around. I don't know when Gmail started it, but they were the pioneers of it. So if you all remember our old Gmail inboxes, it used to all just arrive in the one column, but then it started to arrive. You had primary, and you had social, and you had promotional. And so Gmail started to split your emails up into those three sort of categories. It was looking at the campaign or looking at the email and deciding which box it was going to put it in. And then Outlook started doing it as well, or Office 365. It would have a focused inbox and an other inbox. So it would start to look at your behavior and decide, okay, you do look at these emails. So these emails are going to go in your focused inbox, and these ones are going to go in your other inbox. And this sort of technology has continued to progress and continue to grow. So now your inbox is beginning to become almost like a personal assistant. So it is looking at how you behave and how you react to an email, and then making a decision next time you get an email of a similar fashion. So if you instantly delete an email without even opening it or reading it or clicking on it, next time you get an email of a similar fashion, your inbox will go, well, I'm just going to move that straight to spam because you didn't open the last one. So why should I bother you with this one? So it starts to learn, and it starts to look at your engagement. It starts to look whether or not you are opening it. Do you just delete it straight away without even giving it a second's thought? Not only does this affect that single user, that sort of information is passed back up to Office HQ and Gmail, and they start to feed that down throughout the rest of its users. So if it's starting to see a lot of emails going into spam to a particular inbox, and it sees those emails coming into other users, it does the same thing. It says, oh, okay, that's going in other people's spam folders, so I'm going to do it in that one, in other users on there. So it's continually learning. It's taking the information, it's taking your behavior, and it's passing it upstream, as well as affecting the inbox in there. So it's very, very important when it comes to behavioral learning that we're treating it correctly. And I can see a question here from Jenny. They're not sort of relevant, but the emails about this session, some of them went in the junk folder and had to move them back into the inbox. That is a classic example there of teaching your inbox what to do with a particular email. So if you do find it in the junk folder, all that user's got to do is say, no, actually, that wasn't junk. Click on it, move it, and drop it into inbox. That user is then teaching its own inbox to say, oh, actually, okay, sorry, I didn't. Next time one arrives like that, I won't put it in the junk folder. So if you do ever get a subscriber who says all your emails go in my spam folder, you can just ask them, just say, would you mind just dragging it into your inbox? It's that simple. They're teaching their inbox to deal with future communications of a similar sort of style and a similar sort of layout to arrive in the inbox rather than the junk folder. This is very prevalent when it comes to us as email communicators, because what we do is once we've written our email, we send ourselves a proof, and then we end up with what I call death by proof, because we send it into our inbox and we look at it and go, oops, there's a typo there, so we change it. So we go into back into our sending engine, we change the typo, and we send ourselves another proof, and then we look at it and we go, I'm going to reword that little phrase there. I'm not 100% happy with it. So we go back and we do it again, and we send ourselves another proof. This is our third proof, goes into spam. Oh, wow, why haven't my email's going into spam now? Well, what's happened? What's happened? Your inbox is beginning to learn how you're reacting to similar emails that are coming at you one by one in a really quick succession, because you're just looking at them very briefly and then deleting them. And so you're teaching your inbox how to deal with this email. This will not happen to your recipients, because they will receive the email once. It will be the copy that you're happy with. But because we've killed ourselves with proofing, eventually it'll get to a period where our message box and our inbox will say, no, this is the 10th email on the trot I've had with this subject line. They're going in spam now. There's obviously something not quite right about it. So, death by proof covered. The new one of the new kids on the block is email bots. These are sometimes set at the server level, and what they're doing is they see your email coming in, and before they pass it down the chain, they go and have a look at all of the links on your email, and it clicks on them, each one of them, to make sure that what it says is where it's going. And that's why it's so important nowadays that there are no broken links on your emails, because if that's the case, the email journey dies there. It also no redirects, or you're writing a URL on an email, but it's been redirected when it arrives on your website. So it's not landing in the true space to where you're pointing, because email bots click on every single one of these links in your email, and we can see that take a small effect in the reporting on a platform like ours. So this is the email about our spam filter webinar, and we can see very, very high click rates on this email campaign compared to very low open rates. So this for me instantly triggers it's an email bot. I would love to think that person on the top there has clicked my email 166 times, but it's simply not true. You can't imagine anybody clicking the Zoho webinar link there 112 times. That's an email bot checking where the source is. So as a provider, we try to isolate these down for our customers, because they're an annoyance which can end up inflating stats. So you'll be thinking, well, I've got a 20% click-through rate. That's absolutely fantastic. In reality, it's probably like a 6 or 7%, because the email bots are clicking the email well before the recipient has ever seen it. And I have written a blog on this, and we'll send you the link to that in a follow-up email, which helps you understand a little bit more about email bots and mostly the effect they have on your reporting in your system. So that's the end of our little journey. Hopefully there's some information and some bits and pieces there you can take away for your next campaigns. In summary, there are 3 major points to take away and hopefully have a look at. The first one is your passport and your boarding card. You will not get on an aeroplane without one. Your email will not arrive without an SPF or a deacon. Even if it's arriving right now, you can pat yourself on the back about that at the moment, but eventually it will stop. The message server will take up an update, or they will decide at a corporate level to insist on these two things being in place. Watch out for your content filters. Watch out for those trigger words. Run it through a mail tester system just to make sure that there's no dodgy words on your email, even dodgy words that are harmless in context, but might now be dodgy based on other emails of a similar fashion. And if you do need to use a spam word like sale or bonus or 50% off, try and put those words on an image so the content filters can't read them. Make sure that you're not using any badly written old HTML code. If you're creating an email in something like Microsoft Word and then cutting and pasting it into an engine like ours, it really needs to be the latest sort of tech. You can't use old code on a new email. It just simply won't arrive. And the spam and blacklist checkers, they are easy to use and really, really important, especially on platforms like Mailtester, or if you are using providers somewhere like ourselves, we have those sort of things built on in. Right, I'm going to take a quick look at some of these questions that we've gotten here. Tom, I use Mac Mail clients, the Gmail backend. Does that filter into social, etc.? I don't know, to be honest with you that, Tom. I'm one of those dirty PC users. So I'd have to go and find one of my designers and developers who's got a Mac there to see how they action. But I'd be more than happy to check that one out later. Thank you. This has been really, thank you, Sharon. That's very kind of you. Good to speak to you yesterday as well. Hope that email went out okay. Please, can you remind us of how we ensure we have SPF in place as a NewZapp user? You use the mail tester. That's inside your account, and it will tell you in that settings of under the authentication. If you're getting anything more than a green tick, then you don't have the deacon or the SPF set up. How do I know if my HTML code is badly written? Same answer, Rachel, is having a look on the mail tester software that you have, or going online. You'll see it'll point out what's corrupt and what areas don't work. I mean, the thing with bad and old code is not only will it get blocked by a spam filter, but it also won't look great when it arrives in Outlook. So you might have it looking really nice in your system or in your inbox, but when you send it, all of the padding, all of the spacing, any of the hyperlinks, all of that sort of stuff, all ends up corrupted. So it's a double-edged sword. That means that not only will it may stand a high chance of not being delivered, but it'll look naff if it does arrive. So it's really worth sticking to properly clean, well-written code rather than trying to cut and paste it from a different animal. Okay, I think that's them all covered. Oh, apologies, Abigail. I hope you could hear me in the end. Yeah. Probably no one else had any problems with my low voice. I try to speak up as much as I can, but thank you again for attending. Oh, there's one more question here from Nigel. Website links are redirected to bit.ly links. Will that affect with bots? No, because the end junction is what it's looking at. It's not looking at the links in between. It's looking at what you're saying it is and where it's going to. So as long as that's legit, then it's absolutely clean. I know that's how you currently do it for one of your clients, Nigel. But yeah, they're not affected by bit.ly links. They're clean as the driven snow. So it's all good. Right, I will sign off now. Thank you very much for listening and attending today. Hopefully there was some interesting or some informative bits you can take away from that. We will be publishing this webinar on our website later on this afternoon, and we'll send you an email with a full blog that I wrote on email bots, so you can just check with your own reports just to make sure that there's nothing untoward going on there with bots skewing your figures, basically. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.